And welcome everyone
Hi there.
to our monthly SipScout party. We are super excited for this month because it's
Arizona
all about
wine,
Arizona
baby.
wine. And we live in Arizona now, as most of you know. So we're super excited to share these great discoveries that we have found with all of you. All right. So let's get started. We're getting lots of people joining, which we are thrilled to see all of you. Welcome,
Hello, hello.
everyone. For those of you who are new or not members yet, I'm Suzanne. I'm the founder of the Crafty Cask, where we are all about celebrating and supporting craft alcohol makers like these incredible four that we're going to introduce you to today.
And my name is Evan Rothrock. I'm a certified sommelier, certified cider professional,
Mixologist.
boozy enthusiast.
He's your boozy expert. So while we're certainly here to talk about wine today, when we get into the happy hour portion later, feel free to ask him any of your boozy questions and he can be your resource. So the way this runs, again, for those of you who are new to us, this first 45 minutes or so probably, we will be in webinar format like this, where we will be letting all of our lovely makers who are here with us today.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you, everyone. Bree, Tom, Chris. We'll be sharing, we'll be walking you through the tasting, sharing a little bit about these wineries, helping you understand the Arizona wine landscape a little bit. And then after that, we will allow all of you to turn on your cameras, turn on your mics, kind of interact with everyone and have kind of a little happy hour after we taste through everything. All right, so let's get started. Evan, do you want to talk to us just about a little bit about Arizona wine and why we're so excited about this month, being our Arizona hometown boy?
Sure. So yeah, we're very excited to be featuring some lovely Arizona wines. Arizona is my hometown or my home state, and we are in my hometown of Cottonwood, Arizona, which is part of the Verde Valley and the Verde Valley American Viticultural Area, one of the newest American viticultural areas in the country.
And I have to say, it just got named one of the newest American viticultural areas in the country right before we moved here. It was like 3 months when we were moving from San Francisco to Arizona and back to his hometown. And, you know, Evan being a sommelier, trained in wine, doing all that his whole kind of career. And then right before we were about to move home, it was
very
like,
auspicious.
yeah, it was like, this is the newest AVA. And so it's really
We're
up and
thrilled.
coming.
Yeah, we're thrilled to feature these wines and promote Arizona wine because I feel like there's so much beautiful growth here and lovely wines and an opportunity for a lot of people to experience wines from growing conditions that are a little
Hard.
uncommon and difficult, as you might surmise yourself. It's if you haven't been to Arizona, it's not rolling sand dunes and an occasional saguaro. The diversity of the landscapes and the topography of Arizona are vast and incredible. And we have a lot of like remarkable growing conditions that, while we are in some cases still learning, I read or learned recently that we have the largest diversity of varieties of wine, grape varieties being grown in any state and perhaps in any country, simply because of this very innovation focused community that's finding out what grows best here. Can you go Riesling? Can you grow Aglianico? What do you want to grow here?
Yeah. And that's why it's exciting too, because if you maybe tried Arizona wines, 10, 15 years ago, they were very different than they are now, probably, because there's been a lot of experimentation going on here, planting a lot of different things to figure out what is successful here, what are Arizona's varietals and things gonna be, and so we're really excited to introduce you to a couple of unique varietals today that you likely haven't had before, and some wineries that you likely haven't had, and hopefully encourage you to come on out to the Verde Valley for a visit so you can visit all three of these wineries, or head down near Tucson so you can kind of visit Omphalos as well. So
yes. And visit us. Hi.
Yeah, if you're in the Verde Valley ever, you always know to look us up and we'll bring you around
all the
great craft alcohol. All right, so as you all know, if you've been here before, use the chat heavily, please. Ask your questions, put your comments in there while we're talking, and we will make sure that we feed your questions to the makers. But other than that, I think we're ready to get started with our first wine, yeah?
Holla.
All right, we're going to start with Page Springs Traminette.
Actually, wait a minute.
Hmm.
Before we start right in.
Sure.
Bree,
Oh yeah, we
Tom,
wanted each of them to introduce
Chris,
themselves. Thank you.
Can you just tell us, 4 or 5 sentences about who you are, where you work, and I don't know, a fun anecdote about wine that you love.
Or Arizona or whatever. Yeah.
Bree, why don't you go first?
Yeah. So I'm Bree Nation. I'm the assistant winemaker at Spring Cellars, which is in Cornville, Arizona. I have been a part of this industry here in Arizona since 2012. Also an Arizona native, which is a little unusual. There aren't too many of us that have stuck around. So Evan and I are same here. Yeah, I love Arizona wine. I love the unique ability to work with so many different varieties that are grown all over the state. As Evan and Suzanne talked about earlier, we have so many different small little ecosystems here in Arizona that really drastically range in their temperature, elevation, the diurnal shift, your high temperatures in the day and low temperatures at night. And so we see so many different varieties being grown here. Of course, there are like probably 15 that are the most common, but it's really cool to be able to work with so many different types of grapes grown in so many different types of ecosystems. So it's exciting to be here at this time.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bree. Tom, how about you go next?
My name is Tom Messier. I'm the vintner for Omphalos Wines. We're based in Wilcox, but I make the wine actually at Custom Crush in Sonoyta, Deep Sky. Excited about Arizona wine because it's all just it's keep growing and growing, and turn around and there's another person starting a new winery or a new label, and it's fun. There are so many varietals that are available. People are trying all kinds of different grapes, and how much fun that is to figure out whether it'll work. It's usually the vines that'll be the limiting item for whether things grow well here, but I think overall, just doing well.
Awesome.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Chris?
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Potier. I'm one of the owners of Chateau Tumbleweed. We're in Clarkdale, which is one of the small towns in kind of the culmination of the Verde Valley. I've been working in wine since 2004 in Arizona, and before that, I was in the Pacific Northwest, specifically in Oregon, just drinking a lot of wine and serving it. And that's where I met my husband, who's the winemaker at Chateau Tumbleweed. We're in business with another couple, and we were invested in with another partnership that owned vines. We love making wine in this kind of climate, and the thing that I like most, toggling between the cellar and sales and marketing, is how fun it is to turn a naysayer into a true fan, and it happens a lot, and it feels really good because I started in wine in Arizona when there were a lot more naysayers and there was a lot less wine. So it's a really fun and exciting time in Arizona wine, and I'm so glad that you guys decided to sip along.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. And Chris also designs the really fun labels for Chateau Tumbleweed, where a lot of them have or I think all of them, maybe, Chris, have the tumbleweed element incorporated a lot of times in the hair and cute little hair mode. They're very fun labels. We always enjoy those. So creative as well. Awesome. We have our first question. I'll let any of you who want to answer it before we jump into our first tasting. Green glass, brown glass, clear glass. Is it all cosmetic? Is it practical? How do you choose between what color glass to put what wine in?
I think it's important to, for the rosé, it's a flint glass for Omphalos, but that way you can see the color. I debate whether I want to put my whites in clear glass too, but I think I'd rather keep them in, antique green, so it protects a little bit from the sunlight, that kind of thing, to the wine. The shape of the bottle is also quite the never-ending question, which
Yeah.
type do you use?
Is there any differentiator between green and brown? Or is that really just cosmetic and what, bottle you choose?
My understanding is that brown protects a little bit more than green, which protects a little bit more than clear. And when I say protect, wine is sensitive to a host of different things. UV rays is one of them. And so a darker glass blocks more of those rays. Anybody else have
Any other thoughts
insights?
I mean, at Tumbleweed, we often put whites in clear because we do want people to just drink them, push them along. And we don't really want to promote ageability. Whereas with, we use darker glass for reds that need to lay about for a while. So it really is UV protection in our opinion.
Okay.
Yeah, if it doesn't need to be in a protected bottle for a white that's meant to be consumed young, clear glass is less expensive. So why would you spend the extra money to put it in a dark glass if you're meant to consume it in a couple of years?
Makes sense. Thanks for that question, Jay. All right, Bree, you want to kick us off with our first tasting from Page Spring Cellars?
Yeah, so originally I think the prompt for this event was interesting white varieties that we're working with in Arizona. And I don't know how many people have heard of Traminette. As far as I'm aware, and I could definitely be wrong, I think we're the only people growing it in Arizona. And feel free, other winemakers, if you happen to know of anybody else growing it. No? Okay. Traminette's a really interesting variety. So this grape was actually created at the University of Illinois back in the 60s. And originally it was the guy doing the crossbreeding was trying to get a table grape that tasted like Gewürztraminer. This is a cross between two different grapes, Gewürztraminer and Johannes Sev, which is a super cold tolerant grape. So you'll see this variety being grown in Finger Lakes region in New York, Niagara, Illinois. I actually learned that it's the state grape of Indiana. But we grow it at our home vineyard. So for those of you who haven't visited our winery property, we are in kind of a cool place, and we have a creek that wraps around our home vineyard. And what that encourages is for all of that cold air that comes in off of the water. And then also because we're at the bottom of a valley, the cold air just kind of settles. So that little vineyard has been ripped up and replanted to several different varieties over the years, trying to find something that can actually withstand the frost, which is ironically one of our bigger problems here. And Traminette does really well. What I love about this wine personally from a flavor perspective is that it has a really neat herbaceousness. I get a lot of kind of hop terpene kind of smells to it. In the past, it's definitely come across as more of a eucalyptus driven herbaceousness, but these past few years, it's really like thrown off this kind of Citra mosaic hop characteristic that is so unique. There are no hops in this wine.
Yeah, Evan just whispered to me like it kind of smells like weed, and it does it. That hoppy, weedy kind of nose is really fun.
But there's also like a lush, like melon undertone to it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
a little lychee fruit too.
The site there is not just cool temperature wise, but it's also very cool.
Yeah, Page Spring Cellars. I mean, most of these, they all have beautiful places, but Page Spring Cellars right on the creek
right
there.
On the creek as well. It's a fun locale.
Evan's sister actually got married there.
True story.
Yeah, one of the last weddings that was actually allowed there. So,
yeah.
Does anybody have any questions about the wine itself or the winery?
So Jay has a question here that his understanding of Arizona is that it's dry and hot and grapes are not native to the area. So how does that affect the grape, and does it change the taste if we're growing grapes somewhere where they aren't, natively grown? And then his second question is Tuscany similar to Arizona in climate and, latitude and things of that nature? And anyone
All right, there's a lot to unpack there in the question. So common misunderstanding about Arizona from a growing perspective is that our issues would be dry and hot. Typically it's moisture at the wrong time of year and cold. We've had frost events as late as like in the 20s of May. We've had bud break. We're probably 70% out now, and we're at the end of April. So once our grapevines wake up from their dormancy over the winter, we're really afraid for the first month or so about these little frost events that can just frost out our whole crop for those vines that get hit for that whole vintage. So dry and hot also, dry can be really good for grape growing during certain times of the growing process. Sometimes you want a little bit of a struggle. It creates a little bit more interesting organic compounds. But then the heat directly usually relates to sugar. So you have ripeness in sugar level, but you also have maturity in phenolic, tannic, acidic, other compounds that are not sugars in the grapes that are changing as the grapes are ripening. Extreme heat will, up to a certain point, just encourage the grape to produce more sugar. As that happens, acid levels are falling. And at a certain high temperature, the grapevines actually stop respiring altogether and they just kind of shut down until it cools back off. So we always are looking for that perfect balance between encouraging the grapevine to mature with all of the interesting components, maintain acid while not developing sugars too quickly. And we almost never struggle with ripening our fruit here, which is something that happens in other regions. So directly translated, sometimes this can lead to a little bit higher alcohol wines in Arizona, but not necessarily. I think it just depends on the farming and the particular site and the variety. There are actually grapes native to Arizona. There's Vitis arizonica, and that grows around our watersheds, but it's not really made into wine. In fact, I've never seen any fruit hanging really on them. I think the animals kind of clean it out if there were to have been any before we would ever see it on the hiking trails and the creek sheds. As that's just been my experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bree.
Yeah.
That's great. To kind of illuminate your second question there, Jay, is Tuscany similar to Arizona during certain times of the year? Yes. But overall, Tuscany enjoys the Mediterranean climate, which overall is found on only 2% of the world's landmass. And it is generally one of the most idealized places for growing grapes. And it's typified by, I would say, three major components. The general dryness during the growing season, which means that during the swing from day to night, the diurnal shift, you see a pretty drastic temperature swing. That's actually pretty helpful. We need the grapes to cool off at night so that they can respirate and develop the other components that are important using the energy that they develop during photosynthesis during the day.
So we probably won't see grapes being grown in Phoenix anytime soon.
And that's a very important point. Most of the areas that we grow grapes in Arizona are very high elevation. That is one of the most notable components of the grape growing regions in Arizona, is that they are very high in elevation compared to most of the other notable wine growing regions in the country, or I'm sorry, across the globe, with a couple of exceptions, notably around the Andes in Chile and Argentina. The shift from summer to winter is generally milder in the Mediterranean climate because they tend to be close to large bodies of water. So you don't get extreme hot and you don't get extreme cold. We get hot here, but comparatively, because we're high elevation, it's mitigated to an extent.
We're only 105 in the summer, not 115 in the summer.
And the dryness is a big part of the reason that that's okay, because without humidity, it is able to cool off a lot at night.
Yeah.
Humidity and moisture holds temperature. So a place that's very high in humidity doesn't fluctuate as much, and that's one of the most important and critical components. Yeah,
Cool.
anyone else have something to chime in about
Or
Arizona, Murray? Tom?
I would like to just say that I know home wine makers that have vineyards in their yards in Phoenix, Chandler,
Oh, really?
Cool.
like in 30-year-old vines, you know.
Really?
But
Man, how do they do that with it staying so hot at night?
but what happens is everything happens earlier, because when we're talking about, well, we're thinking about, is it getting close to harvest time? They're already done. They already did it early on because it's so hot. It just happens more quickly. But it's also small quantities of grape.
Sure. Of course. Yeah.
Pre-prohibition,
Go ahead.
pre-prohibition, like Phoenix had one of the larger industries, but a lot of the response or any kind of write-ups that you can find about it is the wine was just garbage. They were like fermenting grape, like raisin type, so, but there was a huge industry.
Interesting. I don't know if I knew that.
One of the hardest things, from my understanding, that exists in Arizona is the period of time when the grapes are coming to ripeness, the veraison period, because that's when we have monsoons.
Yeah.
And the moisture that lends, that you can't do anything about as a grape grower, can lead to challenges. If you have grapes, and certain grapes tend to grow in clusters that are a lot denser and a lot more tightly packed. And even within those varietals, some clones are looser and some are tighter. And if you get moisture in there and then it gets hot the next day, or frankly, 30 minutes later after the monsoon storm moves on, then you have this moisture that can lead to mold. And that's a big challenge too, that you don't really deal with in Mediterranean climates where you don't see rainfall at all during
The great
6
growing
months of
season.
the year.
Yeah. Cool.
And on that note too, Traminette specifically is a little less prone to fungal pressure. Certain varieties have more of an inclination toward it, and a lot of that has to do with the structure of the cluster itself, but also has to do with the density or the thickness of the skins. So on a thinner skin variety, you're going to have a little bit more of a struggle, and with a thicker skinned variety, you're going to have a little bit more protection.
And thicker skins are helpful in places with really intense heat and sunshine too, right?
I guess, yeah.
Bree, before we move on to our second tasting, tell us a little bit about Page Spring's philosophy, approach to wine. You guys have a really large, I feel like you guys are one of the best who've really experimented a lot. You've tried a lot of different varietals. You have a very big portfolio. So I don't know, tell us a little bit about, Page Springs, besides the Traminette, which is delicious.
Yeah. And Traminette's honestly probably not one of the things you'll find on our menu if you come visit, unless you happen to be there during the release of it. We make so many different wines. We make probably 50 to 60 different wines per year for our label. And then our head winemaker also has his own label that we make there as well. So we're making 80 to 90 different wines a year. We make apple wines and different grape wines. We have a really, really beautiful property. We've been doing this for a long time. So the property and the company have just grown incrementally over time. If you come visit our tasting room, we have an incredible chef with a really delicious food menu. We've got really beautiful vineyard deck that you can sit out above the vines. And we also have a creek deck right above Oak Creek, which flows year round. So you can hang out and listen to the water and have a little picnic charcuterie and some wine. Or you can do a formal tasting up in our tasting room as well. So we really have a lot to explore. Bocce court, large format chests out on the property, horseshoes, family friendly. It's a really beautiful place. We're right in the riparian area, so we have really great bird watching, which I know the Rothrock family is really into. We have bald eagles, osprey, great blue herons, and a whole flock of different types of hawks. So it's really nice, and I encourage everybody to come visit. It's absolutely stunning, especially in the late afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. Evan will pull up some pictures and we'll show some pictures maybe at the end when we get through of Page Springs, because it is really quite beautiful, and not necessarily, there's lots of trees and it's kind of lush because the creek is right there. And so not necessarily what you're thinking of when you're thinking Arizona. But that's true of a lot of wineries out here. There are some, we're lucky in the Verde Valley up kind of near Sedona, because we do have a creek and a river that run right through here. And so we have more kind of water play than maybe other parts of Arizona do, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, we'll find some pictures and throw some up in a little while. Awesome. What do you guys think of the Traminette? Has anyone had Traminette before? I'm curious.
So good.
Yeah. The first time we tried this was a few months ago, I think, and we were both just like, oh man, this is so interesting. And I love the weightiness of it. Like, I feel like sometimes whites are just like very light and crisp and like they kind of disappear on you. Whereas this, like, I can talk about this the same way I can talk about a red wine, Very fun. All right. Are we moving on to Chateau Tumbleweed?
Yeah. Chris, would you like to share with us your experience with this beautiful white wine, Picpoul Blanc?
Picpoul Blanc, which is one of my new favorite varietals since I've moved to Arizona. I love Picpoul Blanc.
Sure. And I also want to pre-apologize because I think that as I'm presenting, my husband and my dogs are going to come. I can sense them, and there's going to be barking. So I'll go in and out of mute. But you know how that happens. Energy begets energy. So this is a Picpoul Blanc. The first time that we made Picpoul Blanc, we got it from the Cimarron vineyard, and we still continue to make Picpoul Blanc from that vineyard. This is Dos Amigos vineyard, and it's actually farmed by the same person. And it would be really important for me to explain him. He is, I think, the godfather of Arizona fruit. He doesn't have a huge command of English, and he will probably not be lifted. And he is the best farmer in our state, hands down. You can walk with him through the vines and he will go like this, and then he'll go and find a moldy cluster, So he is just, not only is he magic, and he came here from Oregon with Dick Erath, which is even more interesting that Dick Erath came to Arizona and decided to plant a vineyard in Wilcox. That's like fascinating in itself. Not only that, but he left and went back to Oregon and left his talent. And not only is his talent growing fruit in Arizona, but he's also training all of his children to go out and like put that magic into the vines in the southeast part of the state, which is really hard to find talented, amazing people because it's not very populated, right? So Juan Alba, one of the best people I know that's farming such beautiful fruit. So this Picpoul Blanc, we thought this vintage 22 that we were going to get 10 tons. We ended up getting about 6, maybe a little less. And it was extremely vigorous. It was hard to get a read on what the bricks were. We usually try to pull this so that it'll be about 13% alcohol, maybe a little more. This is the ripest Picpoul Blanc we've ever made. And it was a really exciting mistake because usually you don't get this round nectarine quality. And it just showed us that Picpoul can ride through a little bit more alcohol and retain all of that cool acidity, but have this really voluptuous, beautiful nectarine, stone fruit quality that usually is kind of devoid in Picpoul when you have it. Most of the time, it's got this kind of bright lemon lime, soda pop sort of bing to it. And it's usually relatively light on the nose. And this Picpoul has a lot of nose to it. It's just really fun to work with. It's so easy to drink. And it also works when you have naysayers of white wines, which is strange, but I was that when I was young too. They think they don't like white, and this is a really good kind of crossover grape. Along with Viognier, it has kind of a light feminine quality to it that I really appreciate. My husband is a really good winemaker, but he really excels in whites. He has fastidiousness and a cleanliness to his protocol. And he really lets the fruit shine. And so this is a great grape for him. If you don't know it, it's really cool. It's known as the lip stinger in France. It grows very well in Arizona. It has a relatively thick skin. It harvests mid time, so it doesn't usually have a hard time through the monsoonal activity. It comes off relatively easy. I don't see much damage on it. So it's relatively hardy. And the thing we like most about it is the acid that it carries with it. Even this at 14 plus alcohol had no acid problems whatsoever, which is really amazing because we tend to, the higher the alcohol gets, you know, the more acid we precipitate out. And it's, you know, kind of sad because we don't like soft wines when it's this hot out. It's nicer to have some zing and some focus and some backbone and structure. So I hope you enjoy it.
Chris,
Yeah.
I very much agree. Viognier is maybe my favorite white varietal. And nevertheless, I feel like I am perpetually disappointed by a lot of Viognier producers, at least stateside, because they lack acidity. And it becomes this tumbling, unbalanced, like chumpy, wumpy thing that
It kind
I
of,
don't like.
it ends up tasting kind of like cold chicken, which is super weird. Like, why?
And when it's done right, I love it. And so seeing Picpoul, the way that Arizona producers are producing it, with that nervy acidity that is capable of being there despite being high alcohol, and still having those beautiful like stone fruit characteristics and those floral, white floral notes, quickly becoming a strong fan of.
Yeah.
Thanks to you in no small part.
That's
Why,
awesome.
like, why haven't I heard of Picpoul Blanc before I moved to Arizona? Is it not really grown many places? Because I feel like, you know, I'm with a sommelier, he knows a lot of wine. I feel like I know more wine. And so where is Picpoul Blanc?
It's not a varietal
besides-
wine.
But in Arizona,
period.
Arizona, it is a varietal wine.
Yeah, I mean, its native region in the Southern Rhone, where it's used in Chateau Neuf de Pop, it's always
Oh.
blended.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's more of a blending wine typically.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sure there are varietal producers, but yeah.
there are, but they're, you know, they're harder to find than you would imagine. When you go out hunting for other versions of it, it's harder to get your hands on. Again, we have so many varietals in Arizona that are exactly that, things that people haven't seen. The first time we see them is the first time we see them, and then it's up to us to make the wine and realize the beautiful potential for it, and then like hearken it to the world, which is a strange and exciting thing that we get to do, you know?
And
Dang.
so is Picpoul a varietal wine here in Arizona because the climate here helps it show off better, whereas in other places that it's grown, it just like is better used as a blending wine, or?
I mean, I'm not sure if that's the answer to it. I think that
No.
there's a lot of a bit of historical stuffiness and patterns that people follow. And so we are lucky as we get our legs under us in the States to be able to experiment and say, hey, we don't have that, like, we don't have that history. So, you know, maybe we fumbled at first, but now we have all the potential to, I had a fourth generation Alsatian winemaker in the tasting room one day, and he was just so sad that he only got to work with Grenache Blanc and a couple other varietals. And he was just so excited with the idea that you could work with anything. And so it's going to always be something that happens in our state that we're going to have to explain to people, like the headiness that they want to gather around the varietal. Maybe they have to let go of and just be like, okay, I learned it in Arizona, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that's the really fun thing for you to kind of think about. You know, we all know Sauvignon Blanc, we all know Chardonnay, we all know Cabernet Sauvignon, we all know these things. And winemakers are often rewarded, if not demanded to make those wines, you know, because those are what sell, those are proven. We know that consumers like them. But if you venture out of that and see something that you've never heard of before and try it, like that's the way you find exciting new things. And there's a whole world of wine out in front of us. And that's what I love about Arizona, is that I feel like Arizona is, you know, again, someone who's been with a sommelier forever, like feels like we know a lot about wine. I'm discovering new varietals here that I'm like, oh my gosh, I love Picpoul Blanc. Whenever I see it on a menu here in Arizona, I'm like, I want to try that. That's what I want to have.
Just a fun factoid aside briefly, Tom, I know you had something to say. There are basically 12 varietals that comprise 85% of wine production worldwide. And there are 8,000 types of grapes that are out there. So lots for you to discover.
Don't constrain yourself.
Tom, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say that a lot of the blending grapes that are blended in other regions, in Arizona, we'll try it as a single variety. Like, for example, Counoise. You know? Yeah. And then people try it and they, oh, what is this? You know, it's like they get really surprised and pretty good.
That's fun. And that must be so fun for you guys as winemakers, right? Like that's really fun to be able to experiment, because that's something that we hear from winemakers we've had on previous, you know, events where it's like they love making wine, but at a certain point in your winemaking career, you kind of get stuck in the routine. You know, you kind of get stuck in the like make this.
I think I would be so bored.
Right.
I would be bored. I can't imagine what it's like to only make Pinot.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
I would love to work with great Pinot, but I don't want to only
do that. Like,
sure. Yeah.
I'd be so bored.
It's true. And I think that when we first started, there were so many times that we'd have like somms and writers come in and ask that same question that would kind of make you cringe. Like, not even ask it, more state it and say, Arizona needs to figure out what they're good at.
I know.
And I think that when we were young, it felt uncomfortable, like maybe we were doing something wrong. And I think that now that we know we're legitimately making a lot of really cool varietals, making interesting wines, and people want to drink them, that we don't even hear that question anymore, you know, because we're like, the thing that we are is advocates for varietals, massive amounts of varietals. And maybe as climate changes and people can't grow all these single varietals that they're used to, we will become a harbinger or a helper for people who need to start exploring different varietals.
Yeah, that's
an exciting idea.
That's a really great point, Chris, because I mean, some of the most long-lasting, oldest wine regions in the world, Bordeaux, for example, just in the last few years, began to allow the inclusion of grape varietals that had never been included there before, because they're recognizing that the changing landscape due to climate change means that, you know, in 15 years, in 50 years, are we going to be able to continue to grow the grapes that we're currently growing here? And Napa's feeling the same way. Is it going to get too hot here? The fact that you can now be producing, this might be going out on a limb, but champagne adjacent quality wines in the United Kingdom. The world is changing, and Arizona being at the forefront of this discovery and this innovation and this revelation of grapes that have been previously only been used as blending grapes is super exciting, because it's not going to just continue to stay the same.
Yeah. And then to echo what was said earlier too about, you know, when this industry started here, which was really not that long ago, you know, it was, let's try it and see if it works here. And if not, we'll try something different. And that's how we've ended up with this plethora of little different varieties to work with in different areas, even in different vineyards grown in different parts of the state. It's so expressively different from one another. And, you know, it's the Wild West. And I think that we should just continue on our trajectory and do what we do, however we want to do it. as long as we're doing it with passion and care.
I like that. That should be a good like moniker for the Arizona wine industry. Like, it's the Wild West. Don't tell me what to do.
Or you could try, but you're not going to win.
And I think the point about experimentation and like figuring out what grows here, like, I think it's valid because there is, you know, even in Napa and Sonoma, there are wineries making things that like, that doesn't grow here. Like, why are you making that? You know, you're forcing it to grow here. It's not that good. Like, you just know that it's popular. And so I think it's an interesting,
Yeah, and
like, you have to experiment and figure out what grows here to then get really good at the things that grow well here.
and they've been doing the same thing over
Yeah.
and over again for over a century there, and you know, there's certainly a healthy couple dozen handfuls of forward-looking wineries that are growing things like Trousseau Gris and
Sure.
Gamay Noir and Cabernet Pfeiffer, where they could probably make a lot more money if they just kept making, you know, Pinot Noir and
Chardonnay. Sure.
and Cabernet Sauvignon, but they realize that that's not necessarily, I don't know, tenuous, or I mean, it is tenuous for long term, partially because the consumer, I mean, the younger generation, to my experience, my understanding, they don't want to drink their dad's Cabernet Sauvignon or their mom's Chardonnay.
That you need a steak with to drink it, or like it's butterball. Yeah, they want
the
different
the
things.
newness, so they can put it on TikTok.
Is
Like,
TikTok even the
have
thing
you
anymore?
ever tried
Yeah.
blah blah blah? Like, giving them ample fodder to promote Arizona wine. Like, have you ever tried Arizona wine? Like, that's great.
Yeah.
It's lovely. It's so great. I love it.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, Chris.
My pleasure. Yeah.
Please feel free to continue chiming in on this. We're going to talk a little bit about this next wine, which is Pandora from Bodega Pierce.
And unfortunately, Michael Pierce was planning on being here, but he had a last minute conflict and he's not able to be here. So we're gonna cover for him. So Pandora is a white blend. And let me pull up do you know what the varietals are? I have.
This is 56% Pinot Gris, 33% Sauvignon Blanc, and 11% Malvasia Bianca.
And Malvasia Bianca is another one that you see here in Arizona quite a bit.
I agree. Yeah, definitely. Less so Pinot Gris, Sauvignon Blanc to an extent. This is the blend that they've been making, I think, from the outset at Bodega Pierce. And this one's a little bit richer, a little bit more full-bodied, and I think a lot of that comes from the heavy amount of Pinot Gris. You get a lot more apple and kind of just orchard fruit pears, ripe pear, a lot for me. The Malvasia comes through in the floral components. I'm sorry, I usually don't like to talk a lot about what I smell on a wine and influence you.
This I like to call it the sommelier shame. He's just like, no, I don't want to bias you. We like it. We like it. Tell us what you're smelling. Tell us what you're tasting. It's fun.
The Sauvignon Blanc acidity comes through a lot for me in the back palate. It leads a little bit more like voluptuous and weighty than maybe my personal palate wants, but the way that it ends, it really pulls it back together for me.
Whereas I really love weighty, voluptuous whites. Like, that's kind of my jam, is I'm always looking for that.
With the exception of Melon de Bourgogne.
I feel like that's weighty. Yeah.
Sorry.
I love Melon de Bourgogne. I know. But like, I feel like, especially I think since I've moved to Arizona, I'm drinking a lot more whites and rosés.
Sure.
Because it's hot here, or I'm chilling my reds more, and that's a fun thing too, to take your light reds and chill them down a little bit more. And so, but I really love weighty, conversational red wines that have all this nuance in them. And so when I find a weighty, kind of voluptuous white, that I can talk about a little bit more, that there's more nuance and more things going on. And I really enjoyed that. And that's often, I think people discount whites. Back to, I forget who was saying it. I think maybe Chris was saying earlier that, you know, people come in and say they're not really into whites. And I feel like a lot of wine drinkers think, if I'm a real wine drinker, I'm a red wine drinker. You know, that's real wine drinkers drink red wine. But there are so many incredible whites out there now. Whereas I feel like 10, 20 years ago, it was like Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, like, and they were fine. It was okay. But it was just like you were drinking white because you were hot. And that's why you were drinking white. Whereas now it's like there are incredible variety between them.
I can't tell you how many master sommeliers I've met and had conversations with that defy the perception that, like, one, white wine is for novices, red wine is experiential, sweet wines are for novices, dry wines are for those who are experienced. The number of master sommeliers who claim their favorite type of wine to be Riesling, it's disproportionate. It's remarkable.
Yeah. So get into whites is what we're saying. This is the summer for you to get into whites deep and really embrace them and experiment with them and play with them. And these are great examples.
In the absence of Michael Pierce, the founder, the winemaker of Bodega Pierce, being here, we would like to spend just a couple minutes letting the rest of the panelists talk a little bit about the Southwest Wine Center, who Michael Pierce is the president of, and the
these
role
are the
that
glasses we're drinking out of. You may not see, we don't often drink out of branded glasses, but these are Southwest Wine Center glasses.
And the role that the Southwest Wine Center has played in the development of wine in Arizona. If any of you would like to chime in and say anything about the Southwest Wine Center and Michael Pierce.
And just to preamble that before they jump in. So there's Yavapai College here in the Verde Valley. And so Yavapai College has a viticulture and enology kind of program that winemakers can go through to learn all about it. And then there's the Southwest Wine Center, which is essentially a winery, and they also have a tasting room for graduates of the program. And other winemakers as well. Can other winemakers get into the Southwest Wine Center? I'm not sure.
Let's learn.
But Tom is a graduate of the Southwest Wine Center. Bree has been involved with it as well. And so it's a gem here in the Verde Valley that we are very proud of.
The only wine education in the Southwest.
Yeah.
My understanding.
Yeah. So teaching people how to make wine and make great wine.
So the Southwest Wine Center, though, is really the blackboard for the students. Those are all student-made wines. They're doing all the viticulture, the enology, and they're learning the ropes. So, and then I know they also sell grapes from their vineyard to other wineries. I'm not sure exactly which ones, but they can. And all the wines it's the students. Talk about innovation and ideas. Like, someone comes up with an idea, they're doing mead, and over the years they've done that, and hey, let's try a sparkling wine, and they try doing that. But so they're always trying. It's the students that are doing it. Students say, hey, I want to try this method, and they'll try it out. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah. And so it's actually really cool because the three of us that are here today on the panel, and then Michael, who's not with us, we all have a lot of intermingling ways that this industry has funneled us on similar trajectories, or, we've crossed paths with each other. Back, I was one of the first 10 graduates from the Southwest Wine Center, and we didn't even have the actual wine center there yet. So I actually had to beg other local winemakers to get my working hours in the winery. And that was Joe Bichard of Chateau Tumbleweed, Chris's partner. And Michael Pierce had just started teaching enology at Yavapai College for the Southwest Wine Center program right as I was exiting the program and graduating. And Tom was coming in then and taking classes, and then a student founded club was formed called the Grand Cru. And so we've all had these different ways that our paths have all crossed. Michael and Chris both a long time ago worked, and Joe Bouchard all worked at Page Spring Cellars a very long time ago. And then there was a winery co-op collective where we all made wines at the same time together. I used to have my own label with a couple of partners as well, the Oddity Wine Collective. And, you know, we were all Chateau Tumbleweed and Michael Pierce's Saculum Cellars label and Bodega Pierce when he got going. We were all working together in the same facility. So it's really cool how the Arizona wine community is really a community. We've all worked together over the years in different ways and capacities. And I think we've all just kind of grown up with each other in the wine world. And it's been really cool to see the evolution of certain things over time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really great. And I have to say, even when I lived in Napa for a little while, you know, some industries are very competitive where they're like, if you ask them, oh, who's your other favorite? They're just like, no. But in the wine industry, people are like, oh, go to this winery, go to that winery. And so like, I feel like that's a wine industry thing a little bit, but here in Arizona, it's taken to the next level. It really is like everyone knows everyone, everyone's supporting everyone wants everyone to be successful. Like, and so it's just a really fun time to be in Arizona and in the wine industry. And so if you're planning a summer vacation, again, come visit us.
Maybe
maybe a fall vacation.
Late spring, early fall.
Yeah. Come on out in July. No, don't. Seriously. Awesome.
I wanted to say that Michael Pierce is a really hardworking person and a very concise teacher, and he's really given a lot of knowledge to people, and he's really spent a lot of sweat on that. And his winemaking is really delightful. And if you're trying this white, there's a component in it that's the Malvasia Bianca that is so familiar to Arizona. It's like a little bit green on the nose, but it kind of goes into grapefruit pith on the mouth.
Sure.
And it mingles really well with the Sauv Blanc that he put in there. And it might seem fat at first, but if you give it some time, it's actually pretty racy and it's very well executed. So hats off to Michael. He's always sneaky and working his butt off. He's a great guy.
I definitely agree. This is like a fun conversational wine because, as I mentioned, like my perception initially on the attack is like it's very round, and the Malvasia shines through there on the back palate. You get that floral brightness, that levity, and the acidity also like tailors it in very nicely. Like it becomes a different thing as you swallow it than it is on the initial impression.
Yeah, it's a good story. Good work, Michael.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's a beautiful wine. And actually, it has a really cool, almost like a white pepper spice on the finish that lingers on the palate for quite some time.
Yeah.
That is kind of hanging out here, and it's more down here. Like it's even past the back of my tongue. It's almost like where cumin for me like sits.
I love it.
All right, Tom.
Yes.
We have our one rosé, which I have to say, Tom, before you even start, the first time I tasted this rosé, I mean, I've had a lot of rosés, especially again, living in Arizona, you drink a lot of rosé. This is glorious. I love this rosé. So Tom, tell us about it.
Okay, so this rosé, it's kind of like getting off the white side of things. Where these are red grapes that are used to make this rosé. So Omphalos Winery, this is Aglaé Rosé, and Aglaé was my great grandmother's first name. So it's kind of hard to find names for wine. So how many people have a grandmother named Aglaé? Great grandmother. So this is done with the Saignée method. So we bleed off juice when we're sending the grapes through the stemmer, and then we pull that off and we ferment them. I ferment them separately. So this is a blend of 20% Petit Syrah, 40% Malbec, 27% Grenache, and 13% Mourvedre. But they were fermented individually, and this is all wild fermentation. And then at the end, I blended it together. Well, I keep saying we, my wife is involved too, Teresa. And we came up with this, and I was thinking, it's like, this is 14.5% alcohol, which is seems high for a rosé. When I said, well, I don't want to, ameliorate it and bring the alcohol down, just do it. So I left it at what it is. The grapes, the Petit Syrah and the Malbec come from Juan Alba's son, G, who has a vineyard right next to his dad's, which is across the street from where my property is. And then the Grenache and the Mourvedre were from Golden Rule, their vineyard. I was going to tell you about this. I don't know. I think it's kind of fun.
I think it's very fun, Tom.
It had like a candied strawberry note.
There's like this honey,
yeah,
but also like there's like this zingy base to it.
Yeah, it's so fun.
Yeah, I kind of get the freeze dried strawberries that you get in like in cereals or like granola packs.
Yeah.
And it is honeyed too. You're
Yeah,
right. And I don't feel like you usually get honeyed in rosé very often.
Little butterscotch too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, butterscotch and like dried orange peel and like it's so much more diverse in the profile of the aromas and the flavors than you might get from a lot of the more traditional. I don't even know if traditional is the right word, but like the rosés that are so pale and basically kind of insipid and innocuous.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, here's a hint of cranberry and a little zip, and then it's done. Like having a rosé that is compelling
and complex
and like draws your attention to it. Like, I want to talk to you.
Yeah.
What are you saying? It's really fun. Thank you, Tom. This is
You're welcome.
fantastic.
Yeah. And when you do it, as these guys know, you put it together and you keep your fingers crossed.
So, you fermented all the components of these separately?
Yes.
And then blended all four of those varietals together as rosé instead of co-fermentation.
Correct.
Wow.
Because they blend it off, as it going through.
Right.
And we do it separately. We could have dumped it all together, but I didn't do it.
I feel like that's a lot of diligence for a wine that, for many wineries, is kind of a Passover, a leftover. You bleed off some juice and be like, okay, we'll make a rosé out of that.
Yeah.
But to take the time to have a Saignée bleed off of this and this and this
and blend
this,
yeah.
and then take the time to reassemble them into something that has this, frankly, like a little bit more structure and presence.
Yeah.
We're smitten.
Yeah, there are many rosés that make us stop and have a conversation, and this is one of them. And we think it's really fun. Tell us about your journey a little bit to becoming a winemaker in Southwest Wine Center and Omphalos Winery and what that means, and give us a little bit of your story.
Yeah, years ago, I was involved in a restaurant. I was drinking wine, but I was involved in a restaurant with some partners. And so I wound up being the wine guy there. But after that, I started making wine at home. So I was, trying out different things. I said, well, how does this really work? I really wanted to know how it worked. So I started with fruit wines because I couldn't get grapes. So I did peaches and pears and apples and I don't know, name a fruit, and I did it. I even did things like I made an orange wine out of oranges, grapefruits, that kind of thing too. And then one of the more fun ones was I did the tomato wine, which was kind of fun.
That won like an award, right? Like, wasn't it?
Yeah, for the emerging winemakers thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Tomato wine, you guys. Tomato wine.
Yeah. Well, what happened was I was at the school, and Michael Pierce was my boss at the time because I was working in the wine center, driving the forklift, that kind of stuff. He said, "Hey, can you do a presentation to the master gardeners?" And on making wine. So I went up there and started talking about the sugar and the yeast and all that stuff. And they said, "You can make wine out of anything, just about." And one of the ladies raised her hand and said, "Oh, how about tomatoes?" And I didn't do it yet. And I said, "Well, yeah, you can make it out of tomatoes." So the next day, went to the Ranchero Fruit Center down in Mesa and got like 50 pounds of tomatoes. And I said, "All right, let's see if this really works." So I didn't want to lie to the poor lady that tomato wine was doable when I had to see if it would work. So it was fun. And then
more bottles of that.
I do have some bottles left over.
That was my question exactly.
Yeah, Evan's been dying to. Evan has been saying it for as long as I've known him. Like, if you're ever going to make wine out of another fruit other than grapes, like tomatoes have acidity at least.
What has the appropriate amount of acidity?
Yeah.
And the only thing I can think of is tomatoes.
Yeah, I made 2 batches. First batch was only a gallon. That was the one. And then the next one I did like, I don't know, 5 or 6 gallons in a carboy. So it's fun. And I think the other one that was kind of interesting was I made a pyracantha wine.
Oh yeah.
Whoa.
Wait, isn't pyracantha poisonous?
That's what everybody says, but
At high levels.
It's the most. It's 600 on the list of the most poisonous things, and you got to eat like a ton of it to get sick.
Okay.
And, so don't drink a case of the wine.
No.
It's concentrated, but
your boss was one of the judges at the emerging winemakers, and he took a bottle with him when he left. So he really liked it.
If you have a bottle that you're willing to open with us, I think we're all curious.
Yeah, next time you come up to the Verde Valley.
No, we'll drive down there.
Or we'll come to you and that's right. We'll do a road trip.
True story.
I can attest the year that he won, there was a large patio party at Tumbleweed post the winning, and Tom shared a bottle and it was delicious.
Oh yeah? Oh, you've had it.
Oh, so you had it.
Yeah, but this is like so long ago. I can barely remember.
Yeah.
I also wonder how it ages in a bottle, because there's not many places that have a tomato or a pyracantha, Oh yeah, we've been aging this for 15 years. No.
So fun. I love it. That's the kind of experimentation that is happening in Arizona, you guys.
Yeah, like, these are the people. These are the people that are like at the helm of creating what Arizona is going to be. And we're so excited to show off what they're doing right now and encourage them to continue to make strides and make waves.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah, exciting new stuff.
I'm so excited to be back in my hometown and know all of you and encourage and promote what all of you are doing.
And that's a lot to say for Evan, because I have to say, when we first decided to move back here, he was like, I don't know, we're moving back to my hometown of Cottonwood. And he always used to say, when I grew up, there was only one stoplight in town. So he it's a thing. And it's amazing how much it's grown. Even since I first came here 4 years ago or whatever it was, the strides that are being made with the wine and other areas too. Beer in Phoenix, the beer scene in Phoenix is amazing. The cocktail scene in Phoenix is amazing. Like there's a lot of really amazing stuff going on
And
in
it just continues percolating.
Yeah.
out.
Mhm.
yeah, and you know, Arizona is not a place that people think of when they think of craft alcohol. You know, people think of craft beer and they think of like
But-
Denver, Austin, like these other places, but I'm telling you, it's because we're here.
Now it's
Because we're here.
Yeah.
I have one more question for Tom before we move into the happy hour.
Sure.
Tom, because you're so new, where can everybody find your wines?
Oh, good question.
It's hard. I have some wine up in Cottonwood at Eden
Mhm.
wine, and I also have the Malbec over at Vina Zona.
Okay.
And then there's some in Phoenix at Beckett's Table,
Oh,
Yeah.
good. That's a great restaurant.
and then mostly I do fairs, you know, the wine fairs, festivals, and and I have a tasting room in Wilcox that's by appointment because I'm never there. So it's hard, you know.
Yeah.
I don't have a giant presence in Arizona, but I'm trying.
Well-
And a bunch of wine. If you come to Sonoyta, there's some restaurants there.
Well, Tom, I would say, and I think Suzanne would agree wholeheartedly, Beckett's Table.
Great restaurant. Yeah,
If
great
you're
place
gonna
to be.
if you're gonna be somewhere in Phoenix, that is a great place.
Yeah.
Wonderful placement. I'm so happy for you, and I know that Eden is going to show off your brand beautifully.
Beautifully. Yeah, Eden's great as well, for sure.
Mhm.
Great food.
May I say one thing? You were saying this is a misconception that has been bothering me for years, and it has to do with the wholesale and where wines are placed, and the idea that we actually treat rosé like a just an extra.
Yeah.
For Chateau Tumbleweed, rosé is the #1 hardest thing that we make every year. And it drives me crazy that everyone wants it really fast. They only want it really young and they never want it to age. Like, it's a really important part of our program. We take up so much tank space. We take up so much time.
So much.
It has to have a really slow ferment or else it starts to throw stinky sulfides. It's like so tender and so vulnerable, and we work our asses off on it. And it's really weird that somehow it got twisted in the sales end of things
Yeah.
for people to believe that it's just kind of a toss away. Like, especially in Arizona, we work really hard on rosé, and I'd love to have everyone's help changing that misconception because it's so important to us, and it's really like such a beautiful way to drink wine. Anyway, that
No,
was
I think
That's such a good
Chris.
point. That's
Yeah.
so true. Like, every year we spend so much more care and attention to detail with our rosé than any other program. And it's so easily flawed. Like, if you don't treat it delicately, it can easily just go the wrong way very quickly. And so we do have to spend a lot of extra care and attention to make these really delicious rosés that are, you know, either fruit forward or very lithe and acidic, you know, whichever way you're taking it. They're somehow more fragile than their red or white counterparts.
That is
without
a
a
really
doubt.
interesting
Yeah.
consumer education point that is lost. And I think part
And
of the
very
reason,
valid. Thank you, Chris.
and I think part of the reason it's been lost is I always like tease people. I'm like, do you remember White Zin?
For sure, it has a really
Right.
bad, it has
Like-
a bad history.
But
or
people don't realize that rosé is technically made in the same approach that White Zin was, but like now we've figured out how to make it well, you know. But I think the problem is there's still a lot of wineries out there that do consider it just like an
Big-
extra
big
money
discard.
maker off of the off bleed, and that's more common. And that's when you go to the big booze brands. If you're buying rosé from the big booze brands, that tends to be more common. Whereas if you buy rosé from craft brands, they are making a decision to make a rosé, and they're putting the care and attention into it. Not all of them.
Yeah, like everything
ahead.
craft is that way. And like Tom helped shine a light on this dialogue, but every single thing that you try at a craft place is that way. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, it's redundant for me to like beat on it. It's just truth.
yeah,
Yeah, and at the same time, like even craft producers might make, frankly, really exceptionally delicious Saunier rosés. And nevertheless, they're harvesting the fruit that they're picking with a mindset that they're going to do that as well as making the red wine that it was harvested and intended for.
Mm.
There are also producers that are picking fruit earlier with the intention of making rosé with direct pressing and then leaving, you know, a portion of the fruit, however much it is, out there for the red wine they're going to make. And I totally agree, Chris. Like the denigration of this idea of Saunier, which initially was, I feel like in my experience in the wine world, seen as like, oh, that's really cool. This is wine.
Yeah.
Because the way that Saunier, for those of you who are maybe not familiar, Saunier wine was initially done to further concentrate the
red wine.
juice that was left for production of red wine. You would bleed off excess juice so that the skins of the red wine fruit could further macerate and provide more concentration and flavor for the red wine that it was initially intended to. And then the 20% that you would bleed off, they used to just pour down the drain. And so reevaluating what would otherwise be drain wine to something that's delicious, but moreover, reevaluating the fact that not all rosé wine is that, even when you come to understand that rosé wine can be just Saunier, but there's a lot of rosé wines
It is intentionally made as rosé.
and they're picked earlier,
Yeah.
and they do have maybe a little bit extended maceration.
Yeah.
So you do get a little bit of extra texture from the skins, and that's deliberate as opposed to like, this is an afterthought. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's important to.
There are quality intentional rosés out there, and
that
there are like,
age-worthy.
I'm trying to just make a buck and sell all the offshoots rosé out there. And I feel like the rosé all day trend kind of like encouraged all the winemakers to make rosé when in fact they weren't really excited to be making it.
Stop it.
So, but this is one, and honestly, all of these brands make incredible rosés that you want to drink all summer. You're not just like, it's hot out, therefore I need a rosé, and I don't.
I like to drink
much.
rosés at Thanksgiving because rosé is one of the best wines with turkey and all of the spread.
For sure.
You can, especially something that's complex and like layered. Like, thank you, Tom,
for giving us this talk point.
I love
the talk point.
Totally. Yeah, and it's so cool. This rosé opened up so deliciously. It's
really has.
It's more delicate than it was. It's so nice. Good job.
Yay. Thank you, everyone. I've already promoted everyone to panelist. I'm
Welcome,
jumping ahead.
Keep throwing it in there.
Yeah, so that we can have the whole crew here, everyone who wants to turn their mics on, turn their cameras on, chat with us.
Hi, friends. We see a lot of familiar faces.